Mr. Day will explain our closed session. Is it on now?
I don't think.
How about
I don't
now?
think you have it on, Bill.
Now the light's on.
We'll check it out. I think we're down everywhere, are we?
I think they're working on it over there.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just speak up.
There you go.
Yeah.
The Jim Day, our attorney, will explain the closed session that we just came out of.
Yes, the board did meet in closed session this morning to confer with its real property negotiator and with legal counsel with regard to 2 parcels in the Rivers EIP project. Those parcels are involved in condemnation litigation, and the action taken was for the board to provide a level of settlement authority to the agency's attorney, which is subject to attorney-client privilege, and that was the only action taken.
Thank you. I need an agenda approval for item number 1.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved. So ordered. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. Victoria Yukiyama. Victoria? Yeah. Okay, that's all right, I got it. Number 7. Okay. Then Wilson Wyatt wants to speak on item number 1, public comment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Wilson Wyatt. I've appeared in front of you before. I'm representing Seacon Financial and Construction Company. They have property in segment F. I submitted a letter today, which I know you can't respond to at this meeting, requesting that you reconsider the determination of the preferred alternative for levee protection in that section. Hopefully you'll have a chance to review that. My reasons are set out in the letter. Secondly, I've also delivered a copy of a letter I sent to Mr. Nevis, counsel, responding to a request to grant right of entry for testing on the property. That's just for your information. Thirdly, in the approval of your minutes today, I would like to state for the record that the first paragraph on the second page should state that I appeared at the May 10th meeting and submitted materials opposing the choice of the setback levy as a preferred alternative for segment F. And lastly, you've got an item on the agenda today, number 5, for the execution of a contract to provide certain survey services. And I would ask the board and staff that in providing those services, you hold off on surveying the Seacon property until you've had a chance to review our request for reconsideration. Thank you.
Need approval of the minutes for May the 10th.
Also move.
And moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Review of the monthly year-to-date revenue and expenses. Thank you. Ken, you have any?
No questions.
No questions. Consideration of contract number 1 for right-of-way engineering services.
Good morning again. That's my item. We started last summer. We started the real estate process for the I Street EIP, and in the course of developing the real estate requirement map, we found out a couple of things. One, there was a parcel that wasn't identified in the maps, and it took a little digging, and we found out that it was actually owned by Pacific Telephone and Telegraph, and it looks like it's part of E Street, but it's not. It's actually private property. And then secondly, the state is going to require us to put flowage easements on several private properties and the city property that is E Street between the end of the levee system and the river course, the riverbed. So that's going to require some additional survey work, and so we're coming back to the board to request an allocation to get that work done. And I'll take any questions if there are any.
The only question that comes to mind, how did we miss it to start with?
Missing the property?
Yeah.
Because it's we found it. The E Street used to originally belong to Southern Pacific Railroad, and they had done an internal document that deeded quitclaim the property to Pacific Telephone, but the maps never picked it up, so it's been depicted for decades literally as part of E Street. And we happened to come across it doing some due diligence, so we did a chain of title report, and we found the original document. It was in the SBE files, the State Board of Equalization files.
Okay, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Been moved and seconded that we continue with the right-of-way engineering services. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes have it. Item number 5. Consideration of contract award to Mark Thomas and Company for surveying services to support real estate acquisition. I would hope that we would be able to take into consideration the request that we just got in reference to reviewing the CCON thing.
Yes, certainly. Surveying services on a particular parcel will not commence in the immediate future. It'll be sometime in the future before we actually get to a specific property.
Very good.
Good morning, Chairman Denton and members of the WSAFCA board. I'm here to make a recommendation for real estate and right-of-way surveying services for Mark Thomas and Company this morning. The agenda report discusses the selection process fairly well in depth, but I'd like to highlight a few items. The RFP was released on May 10th. That same day, I sent out the RFP to 11 different surveying firms, some of which had previously worked within West Sacramento. This RFP was developed in consultation with internal staff as well as staff from the design team, as well as by reviewing other scopes of services from the WSAFCA flood protection program. Ultimately, we received 9 proposals. I organized the internal review team that included Katie Yancey, who you know has been very active in real estate for the city and on behalf of WSAFCA, as well as our drafting services manager, who's responsible for the internal GIS system that we have here for the city. We went through and rated all the proposals and came back and discussed our results. That resulted then in a ranking process. Two of all of the proposals we received were head and shoulders above the rest, but we thought that it was important to interview more than just 2 firms. So through our rating and ranking process, 2 other firms were then selected for interviews. This was then staffed with Michael Bissett to say, This is our initial choices. He was in agreement with that. The proposal were rated on responsiveness to the RFP, the scope of work itself, their ability to provide project management services to the team and to integrate with the design team, the budget and budget narrative, the project approach, and then their overall experience. After having staffed that with Mr. Bissett, I also recruited Blake Johnson from HDR and Bob Chesner from the Department of Water Resources to be part of the interview team. Blake Johnson was asked to join the team because of his extensive knowledge about levee improvement projects, as well as the fact that he was previously a surveyor here in Yolo County. So he has some basis for experience to make selections. Bob Chesner from the Department of Water Resources is in charge of the cadastral unit at the Department of Water Resources in their real estate unit. Ultimately, he is our client. He is the person that we have to convey property to and has to approve the legal descriptions for the surveying services once we are conveying property to the state for this project. So that's kind of how that part of the process began. I joined the flood protection team November this past year to lead up the real estate and right-of-way team. You should know that I'm not an engineer by training, and so I rely on experts to help me out to make selections, both in the writing of the proposal, the reviewing of the proposal, and ultimately even in interviewing potential surveyors. At the conclusion of the interviews, we discussed all of the teams, and 3 of the 4 appeared that they were qualified. They answered and responded to the questions that we had in the interview appropriately. I discussed the pros and cons of each of these teams with Michael Bissett, and ultimately landed on recommending Mark Thomas and Company for the job. At the last board meeting, Director Christoph asked that this agenda item be pulled to include some cost estimates or some budget information from the proposals. That is included in your report today. As you can readily see, it's not easy necessarily to compare. They're not apples and they are not readily comparable one to another. And so to try to enhance that analysis, what we also did was look at the level of service, the amount of hours that they're anticipating for the project in relationship to the overall budget. And it continues to be staff's position that Mark Thomas and Company is a very highly qualified and provides one of the best values for the WSAFCA team moving forward for the Southport EIP project. They presented a well-written and concise proposal that accurately reflects the amount of work to perform the real estate surveying services, and we believe that they have the expertise to produce the legal descriptions in a form that will be acceptable to the Department of Water Resources. Mark Thomas and Company has agreed to buy field surveying supplies locally, and if additional labor may be needed, they would also look for local vendors. Mark Thomas and Company will, if awarded, staff this project with 3 senior land surveyors. And their surveyor division manager will be part of the real estate right-of-way team. That concludes my report for this morning. Mark Thomas and Company is here if you'd like to ask them any questions, or if you have any questions of me, I'm available to you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this?
No questions.
I need a motion then to accept item number 5.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to accept item number 5.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much for your presentation. Item number 6, consideration of approval of a professional service contract with ICF International for environmental support for vegetation mitigation at the rivers and the CHP Academy.
Good morning, Chairman Denton and members of the board. I'm John Powderly, Associate Planner, and I'm presenting this item. The item before you is a professional services contract with ICF International for long-term mitigation monitoring at the Rivers and CHP Academy EIPs. Under the contract, ICF would provide the mitigation monitoring required by both the environmental analysis documents and the environmental permits, as well as other miscellaneous environmental tasks for both projects. As part of the staff report production, the contract was inadvertently incorrectly printed. Staff caught that this morning and has printed out the complete version of the contract and distributed it to you. The cost was correctly printed in the public distribution of the last week, and I also have the complete copies of the contract if anyone would like it here. This concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
And we arrived at a contract cost of $279,041.
Yes, sir.
That is reflected in the change.
That was both reflected in the documents that you've just received, but also that same contract cost was in the public packet. That part was not omitted.
Need a motion to...
I'll make the motion that we accept.
Motion's been made to accept item number 6 on the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. So ordered. Item number 7.
Good morning, Chairman Denton and members of the board. I'm Dave Schbach. I'm sitting in for Michael Bissett, Flood Program Manager, who's on vacation this week. I'd like to just begin this item with a few introductory remarks, and then Derek Larson of MBK, the Project Program Manager, will provide the bulk of the presentation on this item. The WSAFCA objective ultimately is to provide flood protection for the entire community. And in doing so, this board has directed the program manager and project team to do whatever is possible to minimize impacts to private property, again, to the extent that it's allowed, by achieving our primary objective, which is to protect the entire community of West Sacramento from the risks of flood damage. Along the way to achieving a reduction in private property effects, we've been charged to investigate different methods to reduce impacts, including project design changes that are allowed by federal and state standards for levee construction and operation, potentially adjusting the timing of levee construction to minimize effects to private property owners, and any other means that, again, would be acceptable to regulatory agencies that are responsible for guiding our work and measuring the success of our work, but as well being sensitive to the limited capacity for local funding that presently exists. To the extent that we can, we've also been charged to mitigate environmental and cultural impacts within the context of the project. And this presents an additional design constraint, but it's part of the job. And the primary driver for doing that, in addition to embedding as many qualities as possible in the outcome of the project, it's to further steward the monetary resources that are available for extending flood risk reduction. In March and April, the board directed staff to conduct further pre-design studies in Segment B of the Southport Early Implementation Project, recognizing the apparent likelihood for substantial impacts upon homes and property of residents along that segment. And we are presently engaged in that work. The goal, of course, is to see what we can do to reduce impacts to these properties, again, while enabling the execution of flood risk reduction throughout the 5.7-mile project. And ultimately to demonstrate to the board a design alternative or set of options that represent the community's best interests in achieving its flood risk reduction objective. Today, we're going to be presenting to you work in progress. This is not the final results of the VE study. The results that you'll see today represent essentially the outer brackets or the outer limits of what could technically be done to reduce the project footprint and potentially minimize the number of homes that would be impacted by the project. It also lays out the outer bounds of financial impacts to the project as well as the overall West Sacramento Levee Improvement Program. What today's presentation doesn't do is address what's between those two extremes. The further investigations of relief well feasibility, combined partially penetrating wall and relief well, or combined partially penetrating wall and seepage berm reduction, potentially repositioning the transition of adjacent to setback levee in the segment. Those investigations are underway. They're not complete. And furthermore, the timing expected to complete those analyses and also make sure that the results have gone through all of the internal quality assurance of the consultants as well as review by the Board of Senior Consultants. We believe that level of work and the time required will probably push us past your next meeting, which we had hoped to have all of the results in July, but it's more likely that we'll be coming back to you in August with the completed story. So at this point, our intent would be to bring another interim report back to you in a month as we get closer to a completed study. So with that, I'd like to hand the microphone over to Derek Larson. He's going to take you through the details of the preliminary results. And this material is provided in your staff report. We've also provided exhibits for the benefit of members of the public who are here. I want to note an error. It seems like a day that we're having some technical difficulties as a team. One of the exhibits, one of the mapping exhibits in your packet has an error. We apologize for that. We caught it this morning. Actually, also want to thank Mark Gilbert for pointing out this error. It's the exhibit of Alternative 1, alignment with CSM or TRD wall, Scenario B. This exhibit indicated in error the elimination of a house approximately located at Station 60, but we'll talk about that further as needed. The exhibits have been corrected. There's an updated map available for handout. The PowerPoint show that you'll see has been corrected. This illustration error does not affect the results that are being reported to the board today. These drawings were done by a CAD operator who wasn't doing the actual analysis and calculations, so the factual information that's being presented is in fact correct. It's just that we had a problem with the illustration. Any questions about my introduction?
Not at this moment.
Thank you. Derek?
President Denton, board members, good morning. We can move on to the next slide. We're having some PowerPoint difficulties here, but I believe they've been corrected. So today, Dave has set the stage for us. Oh, yeah. Sure. Dave has set the stage for where we're at. Again, I want to emphasize before we launch in here, the analysis that is performed to date is bookends. We're looking at where we're at on the maximum project footprint versus the minimum project footprint, the number of homes impacted based on that, in addition to the cost and state cost share implications of the footprints. So today, I'm going to go over the background. That's just going to go through and tell you, the decisions that have led through to today that the board has made. We're going to talk about the in-progress briefing, which will talk about the methodology that we've used, and also where we're at right now and the assumptions made for the analysis you'll see today. Then we're going to go through the alternative alignments. After that, we're going to talk about what it means from a WSAFCA investment analysis approach for the different alignments. And then we're going to talk about the potential impacts to the homes from the different alignments. And then we're going to summarize the results, and we're going to give you a quick look ahead as to where we go from here.
Before we get started, can we get somebody to take care of this monitors up here so we can see what's happening?
Good job.
Son of a gun, all you had to do is push the start button. Thank you.
Okay. So January 2012, we presented the 15% design cost opinions to the board. In February 2012, the board approved HDR Task Order 4 for the 65% design, but we excluded segments F and B as the board asked us to take a look at what the impacts to homes are and how we might modify the alignment, and therefore develop value engineering studies for those reaches in advance of making specific alignment decision with respect to reaches F and B. In March 2012, we identified in the EIS-EIR preferred alternative, and that alternative was an extended setback and a setback in reaches B and F. Now, although that's not the decision by the board as to what the project is, that will occur when you certify the final EIR. On May 2012, we identified segment F as a setback alignment, and we allowed HDR to begin 65% design on the setback alignment in reach F. Today, we're going to go over segment B value engineering briefing. Again, this is a bracketing. I just want to continue to emphasize that. This is bracketing the impacts in both homes and footprint and cost share. In July or August 2012, we'll present a segment B value engineering study. I believe, as Dave alluded to earlier, if we're unable to come to the board in July with a value engineering study because we need more time, then we'll have another briefing at that time. So for our in-progress briefing, value engineering study and approach. So we're looking at, in Reach B, at trying to determine what under seepage mitigation measures are available that can minimize the project footprint for the two alignments that we've been evaluating. And today, again, we're going to be looking at what's bracketing those two footprints. I also want to make the point that we will be continually evaluating the ability to minimize the footprint. It doesn't end at the value engineering study for Reach B. This is something that throughout the entire project, throughout every reach, we'll be looking for ways as we gain additional technical information to minimize the footprint and therefore the impact of the property owners. The value engineering study sequence, so that's just talking about the fact that today we're going to be providing a briefing and that we still have work to do in looking at combined under seepage mitigation measures and other under seepage mitigation measures that might modify what the footprint is and the amount of homes that are impacted and the associated cost implications to that as well. So today we have looked at an alternative alignment footprints with berms versus a deep wall. The berms have the larger footprint, the deep walls are more expensive. We have looked at an alternative alignment footprints with minimum O&M corridors. So when we're looking at bracketing it, that means that when we looked at the wall solutions, we applied minimum O&M corridors in those areas. We looked at the project delivery costs and cost share implications and the impacts to property owners. Okay, so now we're going to go through the alignments. So up on the board, you can see here that this is the old railroad right-of-way, right here. This is the Sacramento River, and the way I'm pointing is down, flowing downstream. Here's the Southport area and Reach B. And there's where South River Road goes underneath the old railroad trestle currently. So for alternative one with a berm, this has the least amount of setback of the two alignments that we've looked at in this reach. The number of homes that would be displaced for this alternative is 13. There are 13 homes that would be displaced with this alternative. However, if you look right over here, the green band, that represents a utility corridor, and there's one home that's being shown that would be removed because of the utility corridor. WSAFCA will work with utility companies to try to prepare a utility corridor alignment that will not impact the homes. So we have some flexibility there. Whereas when you talk about the O&M alignment, which is the yellow strip next to it and orange down here, in order to have that shrunk, that's an issue that would need to be taken up with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board and also the Corps of Engineers to make sure that they're okay with us minimizing the O&M corridor. And I want you to know that we have had success with that in the past, as the board is sympathetic to minimizing corridors adjacent to properties. But for this analysis, we're assuming that if a home is in the O&M corridor, that it will be removed. So in this case, with this O&M corridor at 50 feet and the utility corridor at 30 feet, we show one home being removed, and again, we think we can save this, so we believe that there will really be 12 effective homes for this alignment. Now, before I move through the alignments, I do want to kind of allow for questions before I move through the alignments. So if there's anything, please just let me know. The berm is 250 feet. Based on what we know today, that is what we believe to be the maximum footprint for the berm. In the EIS-EIR, we're carrying something more conservative than that, because you don't want to have to go back and change what that maximum footprint would be in the context of the EIS-EIR. But based on the technical information that we've collected to date and the analyses that we've done, we believe 250 feet is the maximum berm width.
When we get started on this and engineering data comes in, if it changes, we will change the width of that berm then.
Yes, we don't have discretion over those types of issues. If it's a design issue and we need to meet certain criteria, the berm width could potentially change. We don't believe it's going to get larger. However, the more likely scenario is we get additional technical information, and if we do, and it can justify a smaller berm, or if the inclusion of, say, a partial wall in the levee could reduce the berm and reduce the cost, then that is something that we'll look at as well. And those types of issues will be explained in more detail in the final value engineering analysis for Reach B.
Derek, if I just to note, you mentioned that there is one house in potential play subject to negotiations with the state and federal governments. And I wanted to mention that the table in the staff report on page 4 does reflect that swing.
Yeah, and it's the utility company. So we have we have more flexibility with the utility company than we'll have with the state and the Corps. There'll be still concurrence points that need to happen when we look at shrinking the O&M corridor, but the utility corridor, where your power poles go, we have a lot more flexibility there. That's why we're saying that it'll go from 13 to 12.
Whatever we do, one of the criteria that we have to look at real strong, as best we possibly can, and get the best engineering advice we can get, is to reduce the size of that berm so that we affect fewer people as to what we're doing.
Yeah, that's our goal as well. Staff has heard that message from the board and the community loud and clear, and we understand those as our marching orders and are moving forward in that direction.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, back to the bracketing. That was what we'll call the maximum footprint. Now what we're going to put in front of you is what we're calling our minimum footprint for alternative 1 alignment. Now in the minimum footprint, there are 8 homes that would be displaced or possibly displaced because of the project alignment. And again, those are homes either in the footprint of the project itself or in the O&M corridor adjacent to the flood control feature. However, much like the last case, there are some homes that are landing in the utility corridor where we have more flexibility. So we believe that in this case, we might be able to only have 5 displaced homes because 3 of the homes, and I'm going to go ahead and take some time to point these out for you. There's a home on this parcel up here, and it's near the breaking point of reach B and C. Can you see my pointer on your guys' screen, or do you have to?
You cannot.
Okay. There's another home here that is in the utility corridor. And then I believe the third one is up here in the utility corridor, but I can't quite make that out. It might be this one. So those are the types of homes, when we have a situation where it's in the utility corridor, that we will try to work to save those homes. In addition to going to the state and asking for minimum O&M corridor with wherever it's justified. Now, the important point is that the walls are much deeper, much more costly. The deep walls are much more costly than the berms, and we'll go over that here in a few minutes. So are there any questions with respect to this alignment before I move on?
How do you prepare a new levee and put the wall in the levee, or do you use existing levee and put the wall in?
In this case, the existing levee would be degraded to some level, and then a wall would be installed or installed adjacent to it and then built up. So there are different ways you can do it depending on the site conditions. So it would depend on the specific condition as to how the wall would be constructed.
Will you still have the 3-to-1 slope on the water side?
Right now, we're showing 3-to-1 water side. We're meeting all the engineering criteria that are required. There is some flexibility there that we will evaluate as we move forward. If there is the ability to demonstrate that we have a stable slope, then we will, and we'll try to demonstrate that again to reduce the impacts to the adjacent property owners. But for this analysis, we're assuming 3-to-1 water side, 3-to-1 land side.
The only difference is you wouldn't take as much area.
That's correct. Yeah. So and that would be a case-by-case analysis where it was clear that there is a home that would be saved where you'd look at that. You wouldn't look at that unless you had some kind of an extenuating circumstance where you're really trying to avoid a home displacement or a critical piece of infrastructure.
Okay.
Okay, this is alternative 2 with the berm. So this is the extended setback. So important thing I want to point out, this alternative with a berm and alternative 1 with a berm displace the exact same number of homes. There's 13 displaced homes with the ability to save 1 home by modification of the utility corridor. And again, it's the same home right over here where you go right under South River Road and you're moving back over by South River Road. It's the same home in both cases. So alternative 1 with a berm and alternative 2 with a berm displace the same number of homes. Alternative 2 with a berm has a lower investment requirement by WSAFCA because it has more setback, which has a favorable cost share from the state. So any questions on this before I move on? All right, and here is alternative 2 with a wall. So this is a minimized footprint for alternative 2. In this case, there'd be 10 homes displaced, but there'd be one home that is in the utility corridor, which we believe we could save, which is this home up here near the breaking point for reach segment B and segment C. So in the northern area. So we believe that that home, we could modify the utility corridor and the alignment of that road to save that home. Sure. Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next slide, unless there are questions with respect to this slide. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what these different alignments mean in terms of WSAFCA's investment. So alternative 1 with a berm, the 15% cost estimate has that at $38.8 million. Now for Reach B, we're showing that under the state cost share rules, you get about a 58% state cost share for Reach B alone. I'm not talking about the whole project here. The whole project is more like 72% or 68%, depending on which alignment you select in Reach B. But for segment B, discretely, it's 58% state cost share, which would mean a 42% share from WSAFCA. So what does that mean? That means the state would bring $22.5 million to the project, and WSAFCA would be required to fund $16.3 million. Now, if the board decided to select a deep wall for alternative 1, as shown on the plans, which is the entire reach, the total cost is at $61.9 million because the walls are more expensive. The state cost share of that would actually drop below, the effective state cost share would drop below the 55% that is the base for the Southport EIP, simply because the state will look at the low-cost solution and fix their cost share based on that. So in other words,
Well, say that again.
the state would look at the low-cost solution, the $22.5 million.
Right.
They're going to look at their share of the low-cost solution to, in their mind, deliver the exact same effective amount of flood control. And they would say, well, if a local agency would like to make a decision to protect homes by using a more expensive technology, they're more than welcome to, but the extra cost must be borne by the agency. So they would fix your cost share at the 22.5, and then you would, WSAFCA would then have to pay for $39.4 million of the project to construct the deep wall throughout the segment. And that's why you're getting a 37% state cost share under this scenario, and the WSAFCA cost share goes up to 63%.
How will this affect the total cost?
The total cost of the
For the
program?
project.
I have slides with respect to how this decision will affect the WSAFCA's investment ability, but not to the total project. So that's something that I can develop for you. Let me, as I move through the presentation, there'll be some more information, and maybe that'll answer your question. If not, please let us know, and we'll come back with something different that meets your needs. So moving to alternative 2 with a berm, here's where we have more setback. So although it's more expensive at $39.4 million, the state cost share is at 65%, and the WSAFCA cost share is estimated to be about 35%, which means that the state funding available would be $25.6 million, and WSAFCA investment would be $13.8 million for Reach B. Now again, looking at what would happen if we went and installed a deep wall, that $39.4 million now moves up to $63 million. The effective state cost share goes down to 41% for Reach B, and the WSAFCA share goes to 59%. The state holds its $25.6 million constant for the deep wall alternative, and the WSAFCA investment required is $37.4 million. And the next slide goes into more detail about the implications of what that means to WSAFCA in terms of the larger project and the Southport EIP.
On the figures that you present, 39.4, whatever, is that figures on construction, or is that including buying the houses? Is that overall cost difference, or is it just part of cost?
When we prepare the cost estimates, it assumes not only construction, but also the real estate, in addition to the design costs to prepare and construct, and even an administrative cost to run the project.
So all cost or figure?
All cost. It's an all cost estimate. Mitigation's in there as well. Long-term endowment is in there as well. So.
Okay.
So now we're going to go and take a look at the impacts to the homes. And after I go through the impacts to the homes, which we've highlighted earlier, but now it's in a table, summarized in a table, then we're going to go over what the decisions made by the board would mean for the WSAC Levy Improvement Program and the Southport EIP. So, as you can see, alternative 1 with a berm versus a deep wall. Again, 13 homes displaced maximum with a berm, 8 with a deep wall. But we can relocate the utility corridor, and then the displacement would become 12 homes for the berm and 5 for the deep wall. So maximum homes saved under the berm alternative, that's the 13 minus 12 is 1. Maximum homes saved total, I take the maximum estimated displaced homes and then the minimum with the wall. So homes saved, 8 total homes if you construct a deep wall versus a berm. For alternative 2 with a berm, again, it's the 13 homes. We save the 1 with the utility corridor. That moves it to 12. For a deep wall, we showed 10 homes displaced, and we could save 1 with relocation to utility corridor, and that gets down to 9. So the maximum homes saved for alternative 2 using a deep walls, the 13 minus 9, 4 homes. So with respect to the investment side, the alternative 2 with a berm with the extended setback gives you the least cost solution to WSAFCA based on the 2 alignments we've looked at. So the WSAFCA additional investment required to construct it is 0 because this is a marginal analysis. So you're not spending any more money than what we have identified on the previous slide to construct the alternative 2 with a berm. If you decided to construct the alternative 1 with a berm, you would need to invest additional $2.5 million. And again, there is no difference shown in the number of homes required for displacement or number of displaced homes potentially between those two. So you would invest additional $2.5 million, but current analysis shows that it is unlikely that it would result in any saved homes. If you decided to go with a maximize the number of homes that you could save, well, then that would require an additional, the 8 homes would require an additional investment of $23.1 million by WSAFCA. So what do these decisions mean? What do these decisions mean in terms of your partnership with the state and your future partnership with the Corps? So in terms of the state partnership, if you were to leverage that $2.5 million with the state under Southport EIP at a 72% cost share, you could construct about $8.9 million worth of total project. If you decided to go ahead and install a deep wall to minimize the impacts to homes in alternative 1, then you'd need to invest an additional $23.1, which would be a total project cost that you could leverage your local dollars with the state under EIP for $82.5 million. So that's approximately about half of what the current cost estimate is for the entire Southport EIP. Now, in the future, when these funds are leveraged against the federal project, after securing federal credit, you can see that the impact of constructing the deep wall would be essentially a loss of your ability to construct an additional $220 million worth of project for alternative one. That's approximately 45% of the entire estimate to complete improvements to provide 200-year protection to all the citizens in the city of West Sacramento. So with that, I think this table kind of highlights the policy implications with respect to the investment decision being made by the board. Are there any questions with respect to this table that any of the members have?
So all our formulas are based on what the DWR funding and what the core funding,
Correct.
and how much we have left. So they're running the show, basically. Except if we were, as a city, decided that these 8 homes that we, and could save 5. So you have to figure out the value, what those 5 homes would be worth.
And remember, the value of the homes are in both estimates. So the value of the homes is factored into the total cost. So that portion of the equation is kind of already taken care of. I think a metric of what you might be thinking is that might be helpful is how much money would we have to invest to save each home. In which case, which I didn't do that type of analysis, but
Right.
you would take this number here, 23.1, and divide it by 8, and that's how much additional funding the city would be investing to save those homes. I think that's
But I'm
getting
yeah.
at your point of kind of like a metric you could use. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So just a quick summary. Selecting alternative 2 berm over alternative 1 berm reduces WSAFCA investment by approximately $2.5 million. Again, that $2.5 million could be leveraged with state to construct $9 million of project, and with the state and the federal government to construct about $23.8 million of project. Selecting alternative 2 with a berm maximizes the Reach B state cost share potential, 65 to 67%. Again, that's not the entire project. That's a blended rate. The state looks at the project as a whole, and that's why for the entire project we're looking more around the 72-ish range, which I've reported to you in the past. Increases the flood risk reduction for the entire Southport region, maximizes the leverage of limited local dollars that you have currently identified through your assessments and development impact fees and sales tax. And both berm alternatives displace an equal number of homes. So from a home impact standpoint, they're neutral between those two decisions. So summary of results for a deep wall. If the board decided they were going to try maximize the number of homes that could be saved or minimize the number that could be displaced, selecting alternative 1 with a deep wall in segment B would be the selection. It increases the WSAFCA investment by approximately $23.1 million. Potential Southport EIP funding gap of about $82.5 million, because that's the amount of money that you could leverage with the state under EIP to construct, again, $82.5 million worth of project. And potential WSAFCA funding gap under the entire West Sac Levee Improvement Program to provide 200-year level protection to the entire city of $220 million, or about 45% of the currently estimated cost to construct the project. It would likely require the identification of additional local funding sources. So that means that either you would have to revisit an assessment issue, or you would have to think of other and develop other funding sources that could be brought to bear to complete the program as currently outlined. And again, it has the potential to reduce displacement of 8 homes.
What is the time factor on something like that?
When you mean time factor?
Well, to generate additional money, $220 million, it's going to take time. Does that mean that FEMA could come in and map us, and everybody's flood insurance would go up?
Yeah. I mean, that's a question that maybe I'll let Dave handle. it's a policy level question, and
Thanks, pal. Appreciate that. Checks in the mail. The it's taken WSAFCA a number of years to generate its present local funding capacity. In fact, that's not been completed. I don't know the length of the measure for the additional property tax assessment, but ultimately, this number of $220 million exceeds the present planned capacity, local funding capacity, substantially. I think. Ken, do you have a? I think it's about twice.
Four times.
About 4 times more than the local funding share at its maximum capacity. That's a pretty big lift. And so, if one were to imagine, say, what sort of factor, how much time it would take to accumulate 4 times more than the present local funding vehicles, so that's property assessment, sales tax, and development impact fees. I'm not in a position to estimate it, but it'd be a while. And that, of course, presumes that the citizens of West Sacramento would approve those changes. These are all discretionary.
During
measures.
the process, though, that FEMA could come in because we're delaying the project.
The timing for FEMA is tricky. We have been told indirectly, and I think, well, at a staff-to-staff level, we've been told that FEMA is holding off on remapping for a number of reasons, not the least of which is federal funding, but part of their consideration is to allow WSAFCA to complete the Southport EIP, to catch up a bit before they run their model one more time to remap in the Southport area.
What I'm looking at is the fact that maybe we don't want to throw a $1,000 bill at everybody at on their taxes or for an insurance program. If this is going to happen, if you think FEMA could come in and do that, if they don't remap, they could probably just put a figure on it.
Go ahead, Rick.
Rick Reinhardt with MBK Engineers. I'm the program manager. You asked a very complex question on the relationship of this to FEMA, and I'll say the most direct relationship is the importance of completing the entire Southport reach. First and foremost, the direct correlation of that accomplishment to FEMA is the ability to achieve A99 as a first increment in remapping. FEMA is on a path to remap the basin. It's hard to say what the implications would be if the cost went up significantly, because it's really going to translate into what does that mean in terms of delay or effect on the schedule of implementation of the overall program. And remember, we're not just talking about that $220 million coming from the local community. It's also identifying the state funds and where that would come from, as well as the federal funds to the core program. And so just to take it back to the importance of this project, we've always maintained that we believe, for multiple reasons, it's important to do the entire Southport reach, and we've tried to devise as our primary strategy a way in which we could improve the entire reach and not leave portions of it unimproved, because it has implications not just to FEMA but also to public safety and our entire effort.
Thank you. A lot of money.
yeah. So with that, just a look ahead. Right now, in segment B, some of this stuff we're doing in the context of the VE study. Some of it is just through our normal course of business. We're, again, like I've mentioned, we're always looking to minimize the footprint as we gain additional technical information. We're always looking for ways to minimize the impacts to adjacent property. But we will be looking at the technical feasibility of reef wells in combination with partially penetrating and conventional cutoff walls. Technical feasibility of reducing the seepage berm widths in combination with partially penetrating conventional cutoff wall. Regulatory acceptability of placing South River Road upon the land side of the seepage berm, so that would save some space to the adjacent property owners. Again, that's going to require concurrence from both Center Valley Flood Protection Board and the Corps of Engineers. So that's a design point that would need to be accepted by our agency partners. Determination of required levee footprint and technical feasibility and regulatory compliant project alternatives. So just making sure that what we're putting out there would be compliant with our resource agency partners. And evaluating property owner impacts, project costs and cost share consequences of the technically feasible and approved project alternatives. So that, again, that's just the analysis now that you've seen me go through a few times, coming back again, looking at these different permutations of under seepage mitigation measures. How does it affect the amount of property? What does it mean for cost and cost share?
First two items. Walls or relief wells back to that overall cost. And are you saying that if cost stands now, we're not going to see any cost share for that, so we're
I hear exactly what you're saying. I think that what we're looking at in terms of the wall, anytime we can start to reduce the amount of borrow we need on that berm, what we've seen on past projects is that the walls tend to be a pretty good trade-off for saving the amount of fill and land that are required. So when we start to look at the walls and relief wells, I don't think that you can make the presumption that those are going to be less cost competitive than what we've already looked at. It could be a situation where those actually save money and therefore reduce our total cost for those types of combined mitigation measures. So there is hope is what I'm saying. I don't believe that we'll be in a position where cost would drive the state's decision on those combined mitigation measures for under seepage.
Have we finished all of our deep drill operations out there? Find out what we got down the ground.
My understanding is the exploration work is done, and there may be a little bit of lab work still going on, but for the most part, the exploration work in Reach B, my understanding is it's taken care of. Rick or Dave?
I think it's been completed,
Yeah, I believe it's been completed.
but the lab work is continuing. That is not done.
Yeah,
yet.
a little bit of lab work left, but they've got the data collection effort is nearing completion.
We'll have an opportunity to go over that.
How's that?
We will have an opportunity to discuss that with you.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, as you know, as Michael Bassett and Dave have mentioned many times, any questions the board members have or the public has, the team is here. The door is open. Please come and talk to us. Set up an appointment. We'll meet with you to discuss any of these issues.
Well, this being an informational item only, there's no action required for the board, except to say thank you very much for what you've provided for us and the information that you've provided for us. I hope this answers a lot of questions that people in the audience have to also.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
I have a question for yourself or for our staff. Is the state, DWR, involved to some extent in their any ability to actual impacts to like we've been operating under the that this is a black and white cost share program, and has other projects some variances that have been granted, and discussions you can have where there may be
It's kind of a two-part question there. So question if the question one is would DWR find a program to subsidize our ability to construct a deep wall to save homes, I am unaware of them taking that position and providing money, state funds from the state taxpayers to do that type of work, where you would try to install a deep wall and they'd cover the marginal cost at some cost share just for the benefit of saving the homes. Now, question two that I'm going to say is, are we looking at ways to try to bring additional funding into this program, into Southport EIP? And the answer to that is yes, we are. And we had a meeting last Friday with our partners at DWR, a very good meeting where we talked about the ability to leverage different programs at a higher cost share. And we conceptually talked about doing that, and they seemed to like some of the ideas that we were putting out there. So while there is additional potential to bring additional funds into the project to reduce the investment required by WSAFCA, I don't believe it would be funding that they would bring to bear to save property just for the sake of saving the property. Share with us some of those items. I can. I'll just generally say right now that there are 4 programs that we're looking at right now. One is the early implementation program. That's what all the cost share is based on. Yeah, exactly. So that's the main one. And then there's a flood corridor program where they're looking, and they would fund things like they'd fund potentially setback levy or floodplain excavation. So any of the degrade in the offset area they might be willing to fund. That cost share program can go up to 90%, so we'd get a better cost share out of that. We're also looking at a program called Conservation Strategy that could bring some funds to bear for some of the environmental processes. And in addition to that, special projects is another area where they fund restoration, which is not the cost for the mitigation, but potentially maybe the physical plantings in other areas outside of the mitigation footprint in the offset area, where we could bring money in there, and that could help offset some of our cost share. So, and again, that's something else that we could report on completely differently at another time with better detail, because these are initial conversations. We're just launching that effort, and so I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more about our ability to tap into other state funds at a later time. So if there's nothing else, then that's it. Thank you very much, board members, President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to mention in closing of this item, thank you, Derek, that this is a presentation of work in progress. There's, as you can see, quite a bit more work to be done over the next month or month and a half or so. That work will be coming back to you in the community. We'll be back in July at your board meeting with another interim results presentation, and in August with the completed Segment B value engineering study results. And the intent here is to equip the board for making some decisions on the basis of technical feasibility and financial capacity that would result in direction to the project team about how to proceed with design in this segment. Along the way, Derek mentioned, and I want to reemphasize that the program staff is available for communications with the board members as well as with the public. There's quite a bit of information here that we're presenting quickly, and it may take some more time and some more conversation to understand more completely. We have scheduled a community meeting on July 10th, so a couple days in advance of the board's next meeting. We'll be holding that meeting here in the City Hall at beginning at 6:30. And we'll be presenting at that time, or available to present at that time, additional information, again, work in progress on the VE study in a setting that may be more conducive to interaction and question and answers, things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have some requests for speaking, and Victoria, you're the number one on the list.
Thank you, President Denton, and also members of the board. I am speaking for our family member who is in segment B and also owns the frontage, property frontage that will be affected by the levee renovation and flood control project. One of the things that I would like to have clarified is the state funding for the cost sharing of the entire project. It seems to be very dependent on the state and this EIP program. So are those funds actually in a general fund and it's been budgeted for the fiscal year 2013? And it doesn't have to be answered now because I've had some communications with members of the staff. Also, at this time, I don't think it's out of order for me to also formally request verbally that you reconsider segment F. And our property, Yokoyama Farm on 3000 South River Road, because we really would like to retain our house and our property intact. And this whole problem could be resolved with a deep wall or a cutoff wall. And we already have the riprap installed on the water side of the levee that would allow a deep wall to be accomplished in the same manner as proposed in January 2009 as alternative number 3, which was eventually rejected. So under that reconsideration, I also might add that because President Denton, you and I have a long history in West Sacramento has been always considered, or in the past, the other side of the town on the other side of the river. And I think a project such as proposed by CCON, who also asked for reconsideration of segment F, would bring long-term, long-range benefits to the city of West Sacramento with this type of development that they're proposing for a marina and other types of shopping center. And it would be a regional magnet for tourism and also bring in revenues from that type of construction and building and development. So with that, also, again, I'm appealing for segment F. We would like to then maintain our home. Thank you. And be afforded the same benefits that those who built in segment G were afforded with a deep wall, a cutoff wall, and a retention of everyone's and lack of confiscation and destruction of their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Gilbert.
Good morning. My name's Mark Gilbert, members of the board. I've spoken before you once before. I'm a geotechnical engineer. I work for NGO Incorporated, and I've been retained by 4 homeowners near the south end of Reach B to help in this painful process. I've gone through the briefing, and it has a lot of good factual information in it. And I appreciate that, and I've had some conversations with the staff about some information in there and some potential things that need to be cleared up. I would very much like to see all the detailed cost estimates behind this information. I think it's about a mile-long stretch, Reach B, and to put in a deep wall is, by my estimation, probably a, I don't know, $12, $13 million ad. And to see it get stretched out into loss of state and federal funding leveraged to $220 million paints a very different picture, and it's not one, I think, that is ready yet for a briefing or is the kind of factual information that you're going to need to make this decision for those people that are going to lose their homes. So I would also request that you consider an alternative that does not have a deep cutoff wall for the entire segment B reach, but simply for that portion directly along the river. That would save a substantial amount of cost and might paint a little bit different picture on the outcome here.
What was your alternative?
Alternative 2 with a deep berm
Right.
shows a cutoff wall for the
Right.
entire stretch. When we originally approached the city about these 4 properties, the thought was, look at a cutoff wall. It is technically feasible. And then that has been extended to a setback levee with a cutoff wall, which may not be necessary. It may work just as well with a seepage berm, which is a lower cost approach, apparently, and I agree. So I would ask that alternative 2 with a deep berm be considered without a cutoff wall approximately from about station 70 upwards to around 95, 98, which would dramatically change the cost of that alternative.
Hopefully your suggestion will be taking place because like he described it, we were looking at bookends,
Yeah, and
something in the middle that
yeah, and I appreciate bracketing the low and the high costs, and that gives you the information. However, there could be a lot of possibilities in between for consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Buck Rogers.
Good morning. I've said a year ago that they could work on that levee and give flood protection to everyone in the city of West Sacramento without taking most of those homes. They've come up with these numbers. It'd take a mathematician to figure out how they got them, I'm sure. Maybe you should hire one. They're going to put a slurry wall in all of those new levees anyhow. So all they have to do is just go a little deeper. I don't know where the cost is going to come up so high for just extending that slurry wall a little bit. Matter of fact, I'll give them the land in front of my house if they save my daughter's house. That'll save them half of that $220 million. So I'd just like to go on record as saying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Buck. Tammy Locum? How do you pronounce your last name? I'm sorry.
It's Lacombe, thank you.
Okay, gotcha. Thank
Chairman
you very much.
Denton, fellow board members. As this process is coming to an end, the demise of my home, I just want to remind you of something. Maybe I don't need to remind you, I probably don't. Actually, I'm reminding myself that in the Rivers project, they put in 0.56 linear miles on the River Crest Drive of a deep seepage berm, 90 to 135 feet deep. According to Mr. Bissett, that costs approximately $21 a square foot. I'm asking for 0.4 linear miles at today's estimated cost of $20 a square foot, a lot less. Alternative to, it's going to take 10 homes. Alternative to with the berm is going to take 13 homes. So it's going to save 3 homes, cost less, shorter distance. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim McDonald.
I've spoken before. I'm not really prepared today, but I'd like to call a few things to your attention. One of the biggest things that's been bothering me is I've been after the people from WSAFCA. They have a budget, and by their presentation today, they're saying different values to you depending upon whether or not they take out certain homes. They have evidently come out, put a value on our homes, but have no intention of telling us what value they've put at our homes. Being in limbo for so long, on all these plans, my home is gone. They will not let me know in any way what they think the value of my home is. Any of you are welcome to come out to my home anytime and take a look at what I will be giving up. You're not taking out tract houses. There is no way I will ever be able to find 3 acres on the river anywhere ever again. I am from the town of Clarksburg. If you want to build down there now, you have to elevate your house. That's how they're taking care of flood control. You have valued our homes already, and one of the things they're trying to get you to do is you'll save this much if you take out this many homes. Each one of these homes is going to cost you $50 million, $20 million, $10 million to take out. That's not the way it should be being figured. If that's greed. That's using our homes to take down your budget. If you could just tell me what you're planning on going to give me for my house, it would help immensely. You've had us in limbo for over a year. I can't go out shopping for a new home or a new place until I find out what the city's giving me. It's causing problems. And if you're going to be so greedy as to say you're going to save $200 million by taking out our houses, I mean, I could be greedy and say, give me twice what my house is worth. That will never happen because all the laws are for you. All you have to give me is best use value, best current price. You're stacked the deck. And I just, like I say, would like you to think about it not as each home is saving you. Losing the homes is saving you $200 million. That's not the way you need to look at this. I'm gone.
Thank you. Item number 7.
Number 8. Number 8. We just went through 7.
Thank you, Chairman Denton. This is the flood protection progress status report. It's included in the board's staff report package, and I'd just like to touch on a few highlights of the report. Let's see, running down in order. The Rivers Phase 1 site, as you heard from John Powderly earlier today, we're pursuing, and the board has approved a contract to provide monitoring for environmental resources on the site. The restoration plan, and that will mitigate for impacts due to this project, as well as the Bridge District Levee Access Road project conducted earlier, is presently on the street. We hope to bring to the board a contract to construct those riparian planting mitigation work along with the CHP tree replacement work next month, but certainly no later than August. The plan for that tree restoration project will be to begin construction September 1. Also want to mention that you've received notification of a ribbon cutting event, and we'll invite Lucy Crocker of Crocker & Crocker, or the program public relations firm, to talk with you in just a few moments after I've completed my presentation. But the ribbon cutting event, which we're excited about, is scheduled for the morning of June 26th. You'll hear more about that in just a moment. Provide a quick rundown on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers General Reevaluation Report. As we mentioned in the last couple of meetings, the Assistant Secretary of the Army and several of her major executives have issued direction to the entire Corps of Engineers to redo their entire project planning process under the acronym SMART. We're not exactly sure what that means, and neither are the local district personnel. I understand that the final guidance is now under headquarters review, but that has not yet been disseminated to the local district. So we continue to work with the district, try to understand how the GRR will be rescoped, and have a date to talk with the colonel and his staff at the project review board meeting next month, early next month. We're also coordinating with the district staff and have requests that either the planning director or the colonel come to offer a briefing, an update, as they have in the past, to this board and the city council. So we're hoping to do that in August, second part of August, and we'll keep you apprised of that date as it comes up. The Central Valley Flood Protection Board has been working at a very, very fast pace in its review of the draft Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, which was issued by the DWR earlier this year. The board's on track to adopt the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan sometime in July, most likely. Staff will be attending meetings this Friday and next week. The board has published a draft resolution to adopt the plan. It's a very informative document. A link is provided in the program update for those who would like to review it. We're continuing to coordinate on other aspects related to the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, such as the urban level design criteria and the urban level of flood protection criteria. Coordination includes work with the California Central Valley Flood Control Association that's preparing formal responses to a number of unresolved issues that affect the way this board will do its business and the city of West Sacramento will conduct itself in the land development arena. We're beginning work on the next steps of implementing the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. Most importantly for us, that will involve a regional planning effort in partnership with WSAFCA and Sacramento County and Yolo County. There are a number of discussions going on, but at this point it looks as if there's growing support for the WSAFCA staff and board to take the lead in that regional planning effort, and we'll again keep you abreast of developments as they arrive. Another item that we'll be bringing back to you in July is a new contract for MBK. The contract presently will expire in a couple months. However, there's an additional level of effort that's been necessary to support the real estate acquisition needed for the Rivers EIP as well as the I Street EIP. Bringing the contract to the board a little bit earlier will enable MBK and its subcontractor BRI to advance that work in a timely way. So you can expect to see that from us next month. All of the services that MBK provides, such as Derek Larson's presentation today, are essential to the success of the program and are largely responsible for our ability to cover as much territory and accomplish as much as we have to date. Quick update on the Sac Bank project. You no doubt are aware that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has restarted efforts. Those are moving along at pace. We think subject to the usual hiccups and bumps in the road that levee construction always entails, but they're on track and on schedule at this point. If the board has any detailed questions about the construction activities underway, I think Ken Jameson has had to leave, but we can provide that information to the board if there are any specific questions. And with that, unless there are any particular questions about the flood protection update, and I ask the board if there's anything you wanted to hear more detail about.
Questions?
What I'd like to do is ask Lucy Crocker to come to the podium and give you a briefing on what's up in the way of improved communications.
Good morning, Chairman Denton and members of the board. We are going to show you a video this morning that has been completed as part of the Rivers and CHP project. Video communications is one of the ways that members of the community are receiving information as the internet has exploded in the last 15, 20 years. And people had taken on email years ago and things. A lot of people have been using video as a way of receiving information. So the WSAFCA program has been effectively using printed materials and mailers, bill inserts and things for many years. They have also been doing some emailing and other things for many, many years and using the media as a form of communicating information. But they have started developing videos also, and that's something that will be used in many different ways to inform citizens throughout the community of how their dollars are being spent wisely and how projects are being completed. And so what was done as part of the Rivers and CHP program was a time-lapse video was put out there, a video camera was put out there at the beginning of the project, and you'll see how that was used to show how quickly this project was completed. It was actually done in about 3 minutes, as you will see today. So we're going to show you how that was completed, and then for any of you who would like to distribute this video to any of your friends, family, or anyone else, it will be up on YouTube later today, and I'm sure Dave or anyone else can give you the link and you can send it out to your friends and family. So Chelsea, whenever you're ready, we can show the video. I know there's one council member that has 5,000 people on his email list that he's going to be sending it out to. So that'll be a great way. And we'll send it out to BB-Can and the media outlets and others. And also we're going to be doing a reminder e-blast next week about the ribbon cutting, and we'll be putting it in there so all of your partners at the state and the Corps and others can see this video.
West Sacramento is undergoing rapid progress at multiple levee improvement sites. Here's the
You have to close your eyes now. You can't watch
in property.
I think it has. So now it's going to rewind, go time lapse reverse.
West Sacramento works. The city is working together, business, government, and community leaders, to protect lives and property and build a better community. But we are at risk, relying on levees for protection from severe weather and seasonal runoff that cause rivers to rise. At risk are the lives and property of 47,000 residents. At risk is $4.2 billion in commercial, residential, and industrial development.
West Sacramento is a community surrounded by levees. That's why flood protection is the city's #1 priority. Not just when the river's high, and not just when it's raining. The reason is simple: public safety.
West Sacramento is undergoing rapid progress at multiple levee improvement sites. Here's the work completed and in progress by the city and its partners.
We've made remarkable progress. Thanks to West Sacramento property owners and taxpayers who voted to help pay for stronger flood protection. They've given us the tools to work with our state and federal partners to secure funding and to build levee improvement projects quickly and efficiently to protect our homes, our kids, our families, our places of worship, our small businesses, and our community.
Thank you all for joining us today. This is a big moment for West Sacramento, for the state of California, for our region.
All combined, the city of West Sacramento will have 4 levee improvement sites under construction this summer.
Frankly, this is one of the, in fact, this is probably the only city that when it's 90 degrees and it hasn't rained for months, that in fact we would be celebrating flood protection.
When this work's done, the city of West Sacramento and the greater area will be a little bit safer, and we can move on to our next priorities.
And we congratulate the city of West Sacramento in their aggressive efforts to deal with these sites, to come up with a financing plan, to come up with the local cost share so we can partner with them. And we're all here today seeing the fruits of that.
Projects complete or in progress represent 9.5 miles of the 52 miles of levees that surround and protect the city. West Sacramento is moving forward aggressively on flood protection. It's that important to the safety of everyone who lives, works, and visits here. Learn more about West Sacramento's levee improvement program by visiting cityofwestsacramento.org/city/flood. West Sacramento.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Lucy. Appreciate it.
Make a motion for adjournment.
Meeting's adjourned.